Let me tell you about this movie I just watched. It starts off with this intense scene where you think there's a bomb about to blow, but turns out it's just this genius kid named Walter doing some experiment with glitter. His mom, who's a cop, catches him using her phone for it and almost flips out, but he calms her down by showing her how glitter releases serotonin and makes people happy. Fast forward 14 years and we meet this suave spy named Lance Sterling, who's on a mission to stop an arms dealer from handing over a bioweapon to some shady buyer. Lance is a total badass and takes out the dealer's goons left and right, but the buyer, Killian, is already there to grab the weapon. Lance tries to get it from him, but they end up fighting and a bunch more goons show up. It's a mess. Luckily, Walter's glitter bomb comes in handy and distracts the goons, but Killian still manages to get away with the weapon. Lance ain't having it though. He jumps out of the basement and onto Killian's chopper to get the weapon back. Dude's crazy. Back at the agency, everyone's patting Lance on the back for a job well done. But he's not satisfied. He goes to Walter's office to complain about his gadgets not working the way he wants them to. Walter tries to explain that sometimes causing a distraction is the best way to complete a mission, but Lance just wants grenades that take lives. Lance is really down in the dumps after being accused of stealing the M9 weapon. He goes to meet with the director, Joy Jenkins, to give her the weapon, but it turns out the case is empty. Then, the internal affairs agent, Marcy Koppel, and her squad show up and accuse Lance of stealing the weapon. They even have footage of him supposedly escaping with it. But Lance knows he's been framed by Killian, who disguised himself as Lance to make it look like he took the weapon. When the agents try to arrest him, Lance creates a diversion and makes a run for it. Now, he's on the hunt for Kimura and Killian so he can clear his name. But he needs Walter's help to make a gadget that will either help him disguise himself from the agents or catch up to them. When Lance finds Walter, the poor guy is all alone except for his pet pigeon, Lovey. He's been working on a disappearing technology using Lovey's feathers, and he's finally perfected the formula. But when Lance asks for Walter's help, he accidentally drinks the formula and turns into a pigeon. Lance is freaking out, thinking Walter did it on purpose, but Walter tells him it was an accident, and he doesn't have the antidote to change him back. To make things worse, Walter has already told the agency that Lance is at his house, not realizing he's now a fugitive. Lance explains everything to Walter and begs for his help to catch Killian and clear his name before it's too late. Lance was feeling pretty frustrated because he couldn't handle things on his own anymore. Being turned into a pigeon really put a damper on his plans. He knew he needed Walter's help, so he begged him to lend a hand. Thankfully, they managed to escape Marcy and her goons in Lance's car and made their way to Mexico. Once they arrived at the hotel where Kimura was staying, Walter reminded Lance that he was now a pigeon and could fly under the radar. Lance tried to get the room key from the front desk, but this pesky pigeon kept getting in his way. Eventually, he got thrown in the trash, but luckily another bird swallowed the key and coughed it up for him. Lance thought he could handle the mission on his own, but it turns out he wasn't that effective as a bird. Walter showed up just in time and used his fancy pen gadget to temporarily paralyze Kimura and make him spill the beans about Killian's whereabouts. They were about to make their escape when Marcy and her team showed up. Walter tried to use his pen against them, but it ended up getting swallowed by a pigeon and shooting out some sticky goo instead. It was enough to distract the agents and allow Lance and Walter to get away. Marcy reported back to the director that Lance was nowhere to be found, except for a stray feather. Lance and Walter finally reach Venice where Killian is hiding out. But before they can sneak in, Marcy and her team show up and try to get Walter to give up Lance's location. But Walter remembers the sacrifices his cop mom made and stands by Lance. Suddenly, there's an explosion in the building and Marcy rushes in, leaving Walter cuffed outside. Lance comes to the rescue and frees Walter so they can continue their mission. But Killian has already used the M9 weapon to get the database they need. The only way to retrieve it now is for Lance to fly. But he's scared, so Walter gives him a little push off the building. Lance ends up being helped by two other pigeons who teach him how to fly. They manage to catch up to the database, but Killian knocks Walter down. Lance throws breadcrumbs on Killian to distract him, and a massive flock of pigeons attacks him. This gives Lance and Walter the chance to escape. Marcy and her team catch up, but Lance changes his face to fool them and create a diversion so he and Walter can get away. They ride a submarine to Killian's hideout, and Walter is finally able to make the antidote that turns Lance back into a human. But Lance is still determined to take down Killian, even though Walter begs him not to. They argue, and Lance tranquilizes Walter and sends him away. Lance goes to confront Killian but gets captured. Killian reveals that he has thousands of drones to kill all of Lance's agents. But then, Killian's computer warns him that his basement has been breached. Walter is back to save Lance. Killian's drones were after Walter, and Lance had to watch an explosion in the water, which made Lance think that Walter had been killed. Killian was on a mission to terminate all of Lance's agents in Washington. But Walter actually survived the explosion by using his inflatable hug protection bubble. Lance apologized to Walter for underestimating him, and they became buddies again. Walter managed to send a message to Marcy and her team for help. Lance caught Killian and they had an epic one-on-one fight. Marcy arrived and realized that Lance was innocent. During the battle, Killian tried to clone Lance's face, but Lance and Marcy fought him off. Meanwhile, Walter hacked into Killian's arm to stop the drones from attacking the agency's secret basement. Unfortunately, the drones had already trapped the agents. Killian tried to escape on a drone, but Walter was able to grab him. They both went high up into the clouds, and Walter was able to hack into Killian's arm. But then Walter realized that deactivating the drones would also kill Killian, and he didn't want to be a murderer. So, he trapped Killian in the same inflatable hug that had saved him earlier, and let him fall while deactivating the drones. Lance then turned himself back into a pigeon, with the help of his pet pigeon Lovey and some other pigeons, to catch Walter as he fell from the sky. Marcy and her team found Killian and took him into custody. Lance and Walter were fired from their jobs as agents for breaking so many rules. But it turned out to be a good thing because Marcy and Jenkins had planned for Walter to lead a new team with his harmless gadgets. In the end, Lance and Walter worked together as a team, with the pigeons as their backup. We hope you enjoyed the recap and gained some insight into the film. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more movie summaries and stay tuned for the next one.